I didn't speak when my sister laughed at me. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I already knew how it would end. She told the entire table I was doing nothing with my life. Said it loud enough for strangers to hear. And everyone just watched. I let her laugh. I let them believe her. Because years earlier, I learned something most people don't. The loudest people rarely know who's really holding the leverage. What she didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that her perfect life was already collapsing. And I was standing at the center of it. Stay with me. Because the moment the truth surfaced, the laughter didn't fade. It stopped. If you've ever been underestimated, don't leave yet. Subscribe. This part matters. It was supposed to be a celebration. That's what the invitation said, anyway. Family dinner. Upscale restaurant. The kind with cloth napkins that feel too expensive to actually use, and waiters who refill your water before you even realize it's half empty. I arrived alone. No partner to buffer the questions. No exciting news to announce. Just me, walking through those heavy glass doors into a room that smelled like rosemary and old money. The table was already half full. Cousins I barely talked to. An uncle who never remembered my name. My mother, adjusting the centerpiece like it personally offended her. And then Vanessa arrived. My sister has this way of entering a room. She doesn't walk in, she arrives. 20 minutes late, but no one cares because she's Vanessa. Hair perfectly curled. Designer bag that costs more than my rent. That laugh that sounds like champagne bubbles and practiced confidence. Everyone turned. Everyone smiled. She kissed cheeks. Complimented dresses. Asked about jobs and vacations with just enough interest to seem genuine. I stayed quiet. Sipped my water. Waited. The food came. Conversations overlapped. Work. Promotions. Engagements. The usual performance of successful lives. Then someone asked me, "So what are you up to these days?" Simple question. Innocent even. I started to answer, something vague, something true enough, but Vanessa cut me off. She laughed. Not a small laugh. Not a polite chuckle. A full, loud, performative laugh that made heads turn at nearby tables. "Oh, come on," she said, waving her hand like she was swatting away a fly. "We all know she's just floating through life. No real job. No direction. Just existing." The table went silent. Not the protective kind of silence. Not the uncomfortable kind that precedes a defense. The kind that agrees. My mother looked down at her plate. My uncle nodded slightly, like she'd just confirmed something he'd been thinking all along. A cousin, someone I used to be close to, pressed her lips together and reached for her wine. No one corrected her. No one intervened. Vanessa kept talking. "I mean, I love you, obviously. But someone needs to say it. You're almost 35. You don't have a career. You don't have a partner. You don't have anything, really. And I just think you need to hear that. You're becoming a cautionary tale." She said it with concern. Like she was doing me a favor. Like public humiliation was an act of love. I felt my hands tighten in my lap. Nails digging into palms. Jaw locked so tight I thought my teeth might crack. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I nodded once. Smiled that small, tight smile you give when you're dying inside, but refused to give them the satisfaction. "Excuse me," I said. Voice steady. Almost flat. I stood. Walked to the bathroom. Didn't rush. Didn't run. The fluorescent lights were brutal. Unforgiving. I stared at myself in the mirror. At the face everyone had just agreed was failing at life. My hands gripped the edge of the sink. Cold porcelain. Solid. Real. I thought about my grandmother then. She died when I was 19, but I still heard her voice sometimes. Especially in moments like this. "Silence isn't weakness when you're waiting," she used to say. I didn't know what I was waiting for back then. But standing in that bathroom, hands shaking, anger burning so hot it felt cold, I decided something. I would never explain myself again. Not to them. Not to anyone. They wanted to believe I was nothing? Fine. Let them believe it. Because belief doesn't change reality. It just reveals who's paying attention. And I was done performing for people who only watched to judge. Tell me, have you ever been laughed at in a room that should have protected you? Let me take you back. Before that dinner, before the laughter, before I learned to weaponize silence, I left my job 18 months earlier. A good job, technically. Respectable. The kind your parents brag about at parties. Benefits. A title that sounded important. And I walked away. No dramatic exit. No resignation letter that went viral. I just left. People assumed I failed. Got fired. Couldn't handle the pressure. I let them assume. What actually happened was this. I saw an opportunity. Small. Risky. The kind of thing that requires you to bet everything on yourself when no one else will. I took it. The first 6 months were hell. I'm talking sleep-deprived, financially terrified, questioning every decision hell. I worked alone. No team. No safety net. Just me and a laptop and a growing suspicion that I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. My savings evaporated. My social life disappeared. I stopped answering calls because I didn't know how to explain what I was doing without sounding delusional. I made mistakes. God, did I make mistakes? Lost a client because I miscalculated a timeline. Watched a project collapse because I didn't understand the politics involved. Sat in my apartment at 3 a.m, staring at a bank account that was bleeding out, wondering if I should just give up. Almost did. Multiple times. But then something shifted. A small win. Unexpected. One client who took a chance. One project that went better than projected. One referral that led to another. Proof. Finally. Proof that I wasn't wrong, just early. Momentum doesn't explode. Not for people like me. It builds. Slowly. Quietly. Like interest compounding in an account no one's watching. Clients grew. Trust deepened. Money followed, but I didn't change my lifestyle. I still rented the same modest apartment. Still drove the same unreliable car. Still declined family invitations with vague excuses about being busy. I let them forget me. Because the less they watched, the more I could build. Every time someone asked what I was doing and I said freelancing, or consulting, or something equally dismissive, I could see it in their eyes. Pity. Concern. Judgment. They thought I was failing. I was winning. But winning quietly looks a lot like losing when you're surrounded by people who measure success in noise. My sister got engaged during this time. Big ring. Bigger celebration. Social media posts that looked like they were shot by a professional photographer, because they were. She didn't invite me to the engagement party. Said it was intimate. 50 people, apparently, is intimate when you don't want your underachieving sister in the photos. I didn't fight it. Didn't complain. I sent a gift. Something expensive enough to not look bitter. Generic enough to require zero thought. And I kept working. Because the thing about revenge, real revenge, is that it's not loud. It's not fast. It's not even particularly satisfying while it's happening. It's methodical. Patient. Built in silence while everyone else is distracted by their own noise. I didn't know yet what I was building toward. But I knew I was building something they couldn't touch. Because the less they watched me, the closer I got to the truth. It started with a name I recognized. Not immediately. At first, it was just another file. Another routine review. Part of the work I'd been doing, the kind that requires discretion, confidentiality, and the ability to follow threads most people don't even see. I was good at it. Better than I expected to be. The work came through referrals. Quiet recommendations from people who needed someone thorough. Someone who wouldn't ask unnecessary questions, but would find every answer that mattered. Financial due diligence. Compliance reviews. Background verification for high-stakes partnerships. Boring work. Invisible work. The kind of work that occasionally reveals things people desperately want hidden. I was 3 pages into a standard background report when I saw it. A last name I knew. Caleb Mitchell. My sister's husband. I stopped reading. Stared at the screen. Refreshed the page like maybe I'd misread. But no. There it was. His name. His company. Tied to a transaction that didn't quite add up. At first, I told myself it was nothing. A coincidence. Maybe a common name. Maybe a mistake in the records. But I've learned not to trust coincidence. So I kept reading. And reading. And reading. Accounts that didn't align. transfers that happened just before audits, shell companies with addresses that led to P.O. boxes and registered agents who didn't exist. The kind of financial architecture you build when you're hiding something. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something sharper. Darker. Recognition. Because I'd seen this before. In other files. Other clients. The pattern was textbook. And Caleb's name was woven through it like a thread pulled too tight. I should have stopped there. Should have flagged it. Passed it along. Stayed professional. But I didn't. I pulled the full report. Every document. Every transaction history. Every connection I could trace. It took me 4 days. 4 days of barely sleeping. Of cross-referencing databases I probably shouldn't have had access to. Of following money through so many layers I almost lost the trail. And then I found it. The part that made my blood run cold. Vanessa's name. Not as a victim. Not as collateral damage. As a participant. Account holder. Signatory. Co-conspirator in something that was either breathtakingly illegal or close enough that the difference didn't matter. I sat back in my chair. Stared at the ceiling. Laughed, once sharp and bitter. My perfect sister. The one who mocked me for having nothing. The one who paraded her life like a trophy. Was committing fraud. And I had proof. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't call a friend. Didn't reach out to family. I saved every document. Created backups. Encrypted files. Stored them in 3 separate locations. And I waited. Because timing matters. Leverage matters. And I was finally holding both. Most people never see betrayal coming. Subscribers do. 3 months passed. I watched from a distance. Social media posts slowed. The polished photos became less frequent. The captions shorter. Vanessa was stressed. I could tell even through the filters. The forced smiles that didn't reach her eyes. The vacation photos that felt like obligations. The sudden interest in simplifying and focusing on what matters. Rich person code for. The money's running out. Then the message came. 3 words. Can we talk? Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement of the dinner, the humiliation, the years of casual cruelty disguised as concern. A request. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Part of me, the part that was still that girl in the bathroom mirror, shaking with suppressed rage, wanted to ignore it. To delete it. To let her drown in whatever mess she'd made without throwing her a single rope. But the smarter part of me, the part that had learned patience, strategy, silence, knew better. I replied. Professional setting only. Thursday. 2 p.m. I gave her an address. A conference room I sometimes rented for client meetings. Neutral. Controlled. Mine. She agreed immediately. I spent the next 3 days preparing. Not emotionally. I was past that. I'd processed the anger, the betrayal, the years of being treated like I was invisible unless I was useful or mockable. I prepared documentation. 2 envelopes. The first contained copies of the financial irregularities. Transactions. Timelines. Patterns. Nothing with her name yet. Just Caleb's. The second contained everything else. Her signatures. Her account numbers. Her involvement. Proof that she wasn't just connected to this mess, she was part of it. Thursday came. I arrived early. Set up the room. 2 chairs. 1 table. A glass of water on each side. I placed both envelopes in my bag. Out of sight. Waiting. Vanessa arrived exactly on time. She walked in the way she always did, confident, composed, like she was doing me a favor by showing up. She looked good. Thinner, maybe. More tired around the eyes. But still polished. Still put together. Still pretending. Hey, she said, smiling. That practiced smile. Thanks for meeting me. I gestured to the chair across from me. Said nothing. She sat. Folded her hands on the table. Her nails were perfect. Manicured. French tips. So, she started, voice casual. I know we haven't really talked much lately. And I'm sorry about that. Things have been crazy. I nodded. Let her continue. Caleb and I are going through something. Financial stuff. Complicated business, things I don't fully understand. She laughed, nervous, self-deprecating. I know you've been doing some kind of consulting work, and I thought maybe you could help. Or at least point me in the right direction. She still didn't know. She had no idea who she was sitting across from. No idea what I knew. No idea that her entire life was in 2 envelopes in my bag. I reached down slowly, pulled out the first envelope, placed it on the table between us. "Open it," I said. My voice was calm, flat, the voice of someone who's moved past anger into something colder. She frowned, reached for it, pulled out the papers. I watched her face as she read. Confusion first, then recognition, then something that looked like fear. "Where did you?" she started. "Keep reading," I said. She did, page after page. Her hands started shaking. Just slightly. Just enough. This is Caleb's business. I don't understand why you're showing me this." I reached into my bag again, pulled out the second envelope, placed it on top of the first. "Open it," I said again. This time she hesitated. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment it clicked. The moment she realized she wasn't sitting across from her forgettable little sister. She was sitting across from someone who knew everything. Her hand trembled as she opened the second envelope. Her name was on the first page. I didn't say anything. Just let her read. Let her see her own signature. Her own accounts. Her own involvement documented in black and white. She made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. "I can explain," she said quickly. "This isn't what it looks like." "I didn't know." "You knew," I said. "Quiet. Certain." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. "You don't understand. It was supposed to be." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You committed fraud. With your husband. For years. And now it's collapsing." Tears started. Real ones, maybe. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't. We can fix this. We can make this right. I'll do anything." I leaned back in my chair. Studied her. This woman who had laughed at me in front of our entire family. Who had called me nothing. Who had made me feel small and invisible and worthless. Was begging. "Don't look away now. This is where silence gets expensive." The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. Vanessa's mascara was starting to run. Just a little. Just enough to crack the perfect facade. "Do you remember the dinner?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Conversational, almost. She blinked. "What dinner?" 6 months ago. The family celebration. You arrived late. Wearing that blue dress. I could see her trying to place it. Trying to remember. "You laughed at me," I continued. "Told everyone I was floating through life. Called me a cautionary tale. Said I had nothing." Recognition flickered across her face. Then embarrassment. Then defense. "I was just trying to help." "You were trying to humiliate me," I said. Still quiet. Still calm. "And it worked. Everyone agreed with you. No one defended me." I went to the bathroom and stood in front of that mirror and decided something. I leaned forward slightly. I decided I would never give you the satisfaction of knowing what I was building. I would let you believe I was nothing. Let you pity me. Let you feel superior. My hand rested on the second envelope. Because I knew something you didn't. I knew that the loudest people, the ones who need everyone to see their success, are usually hiding something. Her face went pale. And I was right. I tapped the envelope. This isn't about the money. This isn't even about justice, really. This is about you learning something that took me years to understand. I paused. Let her wait. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. She was crying openly now, hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm so sorry. I was awful. I know I was awful. But please, please don't destroy my life over one dinner." I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy. Something more complicated. "One dinner," I repeated. "You think this is about one dinner?" I stood up, gathered the envelopes. "This is about every time you made me feel invisible. Every backhanded compliment. Every way you positioned yourself above me while I was struggling. Every time you weaponized your success against my silence." I looked down at her. "You didn't just humiliate me once, Vanessa. You built your identity on being better than me. And when I stopped playing that game, you couldn't handle it." She looked up, eyes red, desperate. What are you going to do? I considered her. This broken version of my sister. This woman who'd spent years making me feel small. I don't know yet, I said honestly. And that was the truth. I'd imagined this moment for months. The confrontation. The revelation. The power shift. But now that I was here, now that I had everything I needed to destroy her completely, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. You have a choice to make, I said finally. You can come clean. Tell Caleb's partners. Tell the authorities. Take responsibility for what you did. She started to protest. I held up a hand. Or I do it for you. With documentation. With evidence. With none of the mercy you'd get if you confessed first. That's not a choice, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's consequences. I picked up my bag. Moved toward the door. Wait, she called out. What happens now? With us? I stopped. Didn't turn around. There is no us, Vanessa. There hasn't been for a long time. But we're sisters. Sisters protect each other, I said. You made me a target. There's a difference. I opened the door. Paused. You have 1 week. After that, I make the decision for you. I walked out. Left her sitting there with the evidence of her own destruction spread out on the table. And I didn't look back. Was this justice or cruelty? Comment your verdict. The week that followed was strange. I didn't hear from Vanessa. No calls. No texts. No desperate pleas or angry accusations. Just silence. I went about my work. Met with clients. Finished projects. Lived my life. But every morning, I woke up thinking about those envelopes. About the choice I'd given her. About the line I was walking between justice and revenge. Because there's a difference, isn't there? Justice is about accountability. About consequences matching actions. About systems working the way they're supposed to. Revenge is about pain. About making someone hurt the way they hurt you. About evening a score that can never actually be even. I thought I wanted revenge. For months, I thought that's what I was building toward. The moment where I could watch Vanessa's perfect life crumble the way mine had felt like it was crumbling in that bathroom. The moment where she would understand what it felt like to be nothing. But now that I had the power to do it, really do it, I realized something uncomfortable. I didn't want to become the thing I hated about her. I didn't want to use my knowledge as a weapon. Didn't want to humiliate her publicly. Didn't want to stand over her rubble and feel satisfied. Because that would make me just like her. Just louder about it. On day 6, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello. It's me. Vanessa's voice. Rough. Like she'd been crying for days. I said nothing. Let her continue. I told him. Told Caleb we needed to come clean. He didn't want to. We fought. He left. I heard her take a shaky breath. I contacted a lawyer. We're preparing to disclose everything. Cooperate with whatever investigation comes. I don't know what happens next, but you were right. I can't live like this. Still, I said nothing. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I heard you. And you were right about all of it. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I was cruel to you. For years. And it wasn't about you at all. It was about me being terrified that if you succeeded quietly, it would mean my loud success was hollow. And it was. It is. I closed my eyes. Thank you for not destroying me, she whispered. Even though you could have. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand. That should have felt like victory. Like vindication. It felt like grief. Not for her. For us. For the sisters we might have been if she hadn't needed me to be small so she could feel big. But I wasn't sad. I was clear. I sent one final email that day. To my contact in the regulatory office. Anonymous tip. Just enough information to start an investigation. Not enough to trace back to me. Because I wasn't going to destroy Vanessa. But I wasn't going to save her either. She made her choices. She'd face her consequences. And I would face mine. Which was this. I could have used what I knew as a weapon. Could have posted it publicly. Send it to her friends. Made her humiliation as public and painful as mine had been. But I chose not to. Not because she deserved mercy. Not because I forgave her. But because I refused to let her actions determine mine. She taught me to be loud, to be cruel, to use power as a cudgel. And I chose to unlearn every lesson. We don't rise by becoming them. We rise by choosing better. It's been 8 months since that conversation. I don't know exactly what happened to Vanessa. I didn't follow the investigation. Didn't track the consequences. Didn't ask family members for updates. I heard she and Caleb separated. Heard there were legal proceedings. Heard she moved back in with our parents for a while. But I didn't reach out. Didn't offer support. Didn't twist the knife either. I just let her go. Sometimes I think about that dinner. The laughter. The public humiliation. The moment I excused myself to the bathroom and decided to disappear. And I realize now that disappearing was the smartest thing I ever did. Not because it let me build something in secret. Not because it gave me leverage or power or ammunition. But because it taught me something I don't think I could have learned any other way. Being underestimated is a gift. When people think you're failing, they stop watching. They stop competing. They stop seeing you as a threat. And in that invisibility, you're free. Free to fail without an audience. Free to build without criticism. Free to become something new without the weight of everyone's expectations. Vanessa spent years performing. Every achievement was public. Every success was posted. Every moment was documented and validated and measured against everyone else's highlight reel. And she was miserable. I know that now. The fraud, the schemes, the desperate reach for more, it wasn't about greed. It was about terror. Terror that without the performance, she was nothing. Terror that if she stopped being louder, shinier, more successful, she'd disappear. And I understand that because I felt it too. But I made a different choice. I chose to disappear on purpose. To be quiet on purpose. To build something real instead of something visible. And that made all the difference. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing now. Not because it's a secret. But because it doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm doing it for me. Not for validation. Not for applause. Not to prove anyone wrong. Just because it's mine. And there's a kind of peace in that. A kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. I think about the people watching this right now. The quiet ones. The ones who are being laughed at. Underestimated. Told they're not enough. I want you to know something. They're laughing because they can't see you. And that's their weakness, not yours. The people who need you to fail so they can feel successful are not your competition. They're your cautionary tale. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them a performance. You don't owe them proof. You owe yourself the dignity of building something that doesn't require their applause to matter. Stay quiet. Stay focused. Stay building. And when they finally notice, and they will notice, let your work speak for itself. Because the truth is this, Vanessa didn't lose because I exposed her. She lost because she built her entire life on a foundation of other people's attention. And the moment that attention shifted, everything collapsed. I won because I built my life on silence. On patience. On work that didn't need witnesses. And when the ground shifted, I was still standing. So here's what I want to leave you with. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're not less than. You're just quiet. And quiet people see everything. They laughed because they couldn't see me. I stayed quiet because I could see everything. If this story stayed with you, you already belong here.